number of companies and investors over the past 2 days talk about AI. Chuck Templeton this morning talked about how in 98 and 99, when he was building OpenTable, he felt like the web was what AI is today. And obviously, you can't go anywhere without hearing Perplexity, ChatGPT, Cohere, Anthropic. We have with us one of the foremost leaders in AI. Andrew has built Coursera, DeepMind. He's an investor at AI Fund. He is a founder and investor. And we have Maxwell Zeff from TechCrunch. Both of you, please come on stage. And Maxwell, the floor is yours. And Andrew, thank you so very much for taking the time to meet with us.
All right. Everyone, give it another hand for Andrew. Thanks for being here, Andrew.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah, so give a brief introduction there. You have done many things. Today you lead work at AI Fund, a venture studio focused on AI, but you've also done very instrumental work at Google Brain, at Baidu. You have helped create Stanford's AI program. Am I missing anything?
Yeah, I don't know. Actually, I've been quite privileged to have taught over 8 million people some sort of AI class. So over 1,000 persons alive has taken an AI class from me across the planet. And I think that it's an exciting time to build. As I work across the AI community, the thing I see over and over is this is such a wonderful time to be building things.
So something I talk to founders about all the time when they're trying to create businesses today is a lot of them are wondering, should I include AI in my business right now, even if that's not the core idea? So I guess I think it's something that comes up a lot where it's, should you just build with AI for the sake of it because it's so hot and it's so new right now, and that's the focus. So just generally, why start an AI company today?
So, AI Fund's a venture studio, and so we repeatedly build startups from scratch, and we exclusively invest in startups that we build. And we rarely set out to build AI startups, but when we wind up doing something to build a drone first responder, or when we build a company to improve ship routing and logistics, or when we build something for smooth out the paperwork for cross-border trade, we find that AI as a general purpose tool is so useful, we frequently end up applying it to pretty much every business we build. So maybe one thing about AI, I want to share with you what I think of as the AI stack. I know that many of you are thinking of different business opportunities, but this is how I think about AI. Lowest layer is a semiconductor layer, so it comes to NVIDIA, AMD, and so on, doing quite well. On top of that are the clouds, kind of the hyperscalers. And then on top of that are the foundation model companies, right, like OpenAI, Anthropic, Google Gemini, Meta Llama, and so on. And a lot of the hype and buzz has been on these layers of the stack, the technology layers. And this often happens whenever there's a new technology like Gen AI. That's fine. But I think a lot of the most exciting applications, a lot of the most exciting opportunities for AI is not at these layers of the stack where all the buzz is instead another layer, which is the application layer built on top of these tools. Because almost by definition, the applications had better generate even more revenue so that they can afford to pay the technology layers that the media often writes about. And I think as a general purpose tool, there are so many new applications of AI across so many sectors that are now possible that just were not possible 1 or 2 years ago.
Yeah, so I mean, you talked about the foundation layer that's very buzzy. One AI foundation model we've been hearing a lot about recently is Deepseek. That's a AI model developer in China that recently came out with a model that competes with OpenAI's best AI reasoning model, competes with Google's best reasoning model, and they're offering it for a fraction of the price. You're on the board of Amazon. I mean, you've worked with a lot of these big companies that are making foundation models right now, but is it really a good business right now to be making these AI foundation models?
Yeah, so I don't speak for Amazon, but I feel like just speaking for maybe AI Fund, I think the foundation model layer is tough. I think there could be some huge winners. A lot of friends at OpenAI, Anthropic, and so on. I think they have a good shot at making it. I think I hope they will. But the business of training a model and then selling API calls to it, that's just a really tough business model. I think Deepseek attracted so much attention because it crystallized, brought to the forefront for a lot of people a few trends that had already been happening in plain sight. One of the trends is China's been rapidly catching up to the US in AI. When ChatGPT was launched in November 2022, over 2 years ago, the US was significantly ahead of China in AI, right? We had Gen AI tech, China did not. And frankly, China's been very rapidly catching up over the last 2 years. And the fact that China, and this is actually happening in plain sight because we could see open models released in China that were rapidly getting better. And one thing that makes me kind of sad was for a lot of the last 2 years, the US was wasting our time wondering if we should put a stop to open source, right? And kind of dumb ideas like that, rather than working hard to drive progress here in America. And I think that distracted a lot of regulators. Unfortunately, I feel like the White House executive order on AI, I feel like that was captured by this AI could lead to human extinction kind of science fiction narrative. It was not helpful for speeding up AI. To its credit, I think it slowed down AI less than we feared, but when we say, well, it slowed down AI less than we feared, that's not the most complimentary thing to say about the executive order. So I hope that with DeepSeek crystallizing maybe a more realistic view of the state of the world, I would love to see us run faster and innovate faster.
Okay, I want to come back to what you just mentioned about the regulatory efforts, but before that, while we're still on the topic of foundation models, I mean, a lot of cloud providers are investing. They just had their earnings and they're announcing that they're going to invest hundreds of billions of dollars collectively into laying the infrastructure for AI in 2025. I mean, given what we just talked about, the fact that it's becoming less and less of a good business to sell these foundation models, how do you think about that investment?
So I think the ROI of AI will be profound. It's interesting how the price of intelligence is falling rapidly. I suspect there will be some huge winners coming out of this, but it's still a challenging market dynamics. Sequoia Capital published an article, was it last July, on AI $600 billion question. But it did this really nice kind of back of the envelope calculation, arguing that for all the capex we're spending on NVIDIA GPUs and data center build-outs, for that to make sense economically, there's got to be, right, hopefully something like $600 billion of new revenue from AI. And I don't think we've collectively as a field figured out where that extra $600 billion of revenue will come from. There are definitely billions of dollars being generated from advertising powered by AI. I think GitHub Copilot is doing very well. So there are definitely bright spots of decent amounts of revenue, but I think we're still very far collectively from the 600 billion target. And then, but I think it is also early days, and the economic impact will be profound enough. I feel like it's okay to be making such large capex investments, but the long-term business model and the questions about moats and defensibility, these have to be sorted out. Having said that, these concerns mainly relate to the foundation model layer businesses. For the application layer, those of you building applications on top of these AI tools, I think this is a wonderful time to be building, because others have spent billions of dollars to train these models, to give them to you for dollars or cents. You can now, in a very capital efficient way, build amazing applications with very positive ROI, building on the backs of these billions of dollars that others have spent.
So, I mean, as American companies spend billions, hundreds of billions of dollars on AI, there's similar efforts around the world, particularly in China. Like we saw with the Deepseek model, they have a pretty healthy store of GPUs reportedly. Can you talk about how America really competes with China on AI and what's key to us winning that race?
So I feel like there are two philosophies to winning a race. One is, could we run faster and harder? The second is, can we try to trip up the other guy? And I kind of wish America would spend more time trying to run faster and harder. sadly, a lot of the GPU export controls, right, frankly, I think they've largely failed. And what they did was, in fact, irritate and highly motivate China to double down and invest in its own supply chain. And I think that this will actually create a dangerous moment potentially. Well, I feel like I'm glad that with the Arizona TSMC plant, that's growing. But I feel like if ever China is significantly ahead of the US in semiconductors, it actually creates a very dangerous moment in Taiwan when, shutting down Taiwan, right, could be very bad for America, but not as bad for China who has control of, it has its own semiconductor capability. So I worry that we've not played our hand that well in terms of export controls, and I'm actually concerned if doubling down on it is actually the right strategy.
So you're suggesting there should be NVIDIA should be allowed to sell their highest, performing chips to China, and that's not the right, trying to stop that is not the right approach?
I don't know. It's a very tough question. I think we are already where we are. China's already highly activated and highly motivated to take control of the supply chain. So because we've already done that, I think the move's available to us now. But one other thing. So I feel like, so I was chatting with, I was at Davos, World Economic Forum, and I was chatting with the leader of one of the major AI research labs in China, right? And he actually told me that the administration was very happy when he open sources models, which benefits China and it benefits America. So what I'm seeing is when America open sources a model, yes, of course it helps everyone in the world, including China, but it helps America more than it helps anyone else. So the last few, because of the spread of knowledge, right, and just we built applications on top. So I think the last couple of years of a lot of angst about open source, freedom of research, freedom to share ideas. Could we try to lock down these ideas and keep it secret? I think that's hurt us more than it's hurt anyone else, and I hope we'll put a stop to that. And it is one of those things where China is already at or near parity to the US on many parts of AI. AI isn't one thing, it's multiple things, but definitely in many dimensions where China has caught up to the US much more than it's widely appreciated. And I think our best move at this point is to focus on accelerating.
And I mean, there was a regulatory effort here in California that was really heating up this summer. It's a SB 1047, which is a California bill. It tried to prevent catastrophic harms, kind of like the ones that you might see in a science fiction movie, basically by putting these new restrictions on companies that develop AI foundation models. And there was a hot debate in the AI world about this, and you came out strongly opposed to this because of how it would limit open source. I want to ask just generally, do you think that there is legislation, it's worth pursuing legislation to prevent these kinds of catastrophic harms with AI? Do you think that's worth doing, or is the risk of limiting American innovation too high?
So AI has harmful use cases. The problem with SB 1047, and thank goodness we defeated it, is that it would have stifled innovation without actually making anything safer. So AI is a general purpose technology. It's not useful for, kind of like electricity, right? If I ask you, what is electricity useful for? It's hard to answer because it's useful for so many things. And AI is like that too. It could be useful for building a medical device. It could be useful for routing emails. It could be useful for nefarious purposes as well, like misinformation. And, but because it's general purpose technology, it turns out the creator of the technology has very low control over where it will be used. Maybe as another example, I think an electric motor is also a general purpose technology. It can be used to build an electric vehicle or a dialysis machine, or it could be used to build a smart bomb, right? And maybe we don't want adversaries to build smart bombs with our electric motors, but imagine if we pass a law saying that if you sell an electric motor, and if anyone does anything bad with your electric motor, then you are liable, it puts the electric motor maker in an impossible position because the technology does not exist for you to sell an electric motor but guarantee no one will ever use it, to do something you don't want them to. And that's what SB 1047 did. It tries to create liability for AI technology providers that fundamentally are not in a position to say how the technology will be used. So I would say if you don't want smart bombs, built by adversaries, let's put arms control. Let's limit the building of smart bombs. Or if you want to make sure that medical devices are safe, then if someone builds a medical device, let's put the restrictions on that and make sure we go through FDA or some sort of regulatory safety testing. But if you make the AI technology provider liable, then you're just slowing down AI technology development. Or maybe kind of like, imagine we go to people that sell laptops and say, if anyone uses your laptop for something dangerous, whoever made the laptop is liable. It's just impossible for a laptop maker to guarantee no one would do anything bad with a laptop. And so that was the problem with SB 1047. And I think there was this kind of narrative that I think is much more science fiction than science, that AI is so dangerous, we should put these things to slow it down. But that narrative, frankly, it succeeded. It slowed down American development in AI. And I don't think that was a good thing for this country.
What do you think the real dangers around AI are?
I think there are many, I think that there are nefarious uses of AI that we should put a stop to. So for example, I think that the Senate actually unanimously passed, I don't think it's passed the House yet, a bill to put a stop to non-consensual deepfake porn. Right? So non-consensual deepfake porn, where you can take the likeness of a person, sometimes a teenage girl, to generate, right, awful images, is one of the most disgusting applications of AI I've ever seen or heard of. So I'm really glad that we're passing laws to put a stop to that. I think that AI can be used to generate fake reviews. So the FTC has issued guidance on, fake reviews I think is unfair trade, right? So let's put a stop to fake reviews, whether generated by AI or not by AI. So I think non-consensual deepfake porn and fake reviews, these are examples of bad applications of AI. And I think passing laws to put a stop to that is actually a very good idea.
So I mean, on the subject of AI being used for potential harms, so Google just removed a pledge from its AI policy. Basically, they had a pledge on there since 2018 saying that they would not let their AI be used in weapons, used to design or deploy weapons. And this week, they removed that pledge, and a lot of people took it as a signal that they were going to be more willing to supply AI to militaries around the world. I want to ask you to comment specifically on Google doing this, but just generally, I mean, what are the ethical concerns as AI companies are working more with militaries, and what should we be focused on?
Yeah, so many of you are veterans, right? Maybe all of you are veterans. And frankly, when the Project Maven thing went down, I thought, it's thanks to all of you going out, willing to shed blood for our country to protect us all. So how the heck can an American company refuse to help our own service people that are out there fighting for us? So I'm very glad that Google has changed the stance, and I hope that certainly in democracies, those of us technologists, if we don't back up our own soldiers, I mean, what are we doing?
And I mean, I'm also curious, obviously we want to support our troops. I just talked to the Pentagon's chief AI officer. She told me that AI models are already helping to speed up the kill chain, kind of helping in the planning phase, in the early stages, to help people assess their situation on battlefields. And I'm curious, where is the line, kind of? I mean, you've studied AI technology for a long time. I'm curious where you think the line is of what should we be using it for, how much decision-making power should we be giving AI in these situations versus when human life could be at stake?
Clearly, every human life is important. And what I found is that I know that to many civilians, and I'm a civilian, the idea of AI to kill seems awful, and maybe it is. Frankly, the idea of humans killing humans also seems awful. And I find that because the military has had lethal impact for so many years, the U.S. military, you know this when I do, has been one of the most thoughtful organizations in deciding when the application of force is appropriate. And so I think, many of you know better than I do, this is not a bunch of, jockeys going wild, blowing stuff up left and right. The U.S. military, as far as I can tell, makes incredibly thoughtful decisions about when and how much force to apply, and then taking those existing practices and applying them in the AI era. I feel like, perfection is not possible, but I feel like the picture of how our military uses AI is probably much more thoughtful than the broader public realizes. But I think it may be worthwhile to spread the message of all that.
Yeah, I mean, the tech industry and the Pentagon have had a long relationship. The Pentagon has really helped prop up the early Silicon Valley. Do you think that AI presents another chapter in that story between the Pentagon and Silicon Valley? Or do you think this is like a new moment that we're seeing? Like, do you think AI has a potential to change the battlefield?
I think you have completely revolutionized the battlefield. I think many of you know China has very advanced drone capabilities, and I do feel like the U.S. has work to do to make sure that we have the drone capabilities needed to ensure our security for this next period of time. So that actually worries me. And maybe, by the way, just share with you things I do, right? Yesterday I was chatting with a CEO of one of our portfolio companies, Skyfire AI, and he was telling me about a mission that one of his drone first responder drones had run that is probably credited with saving a policeman's life. So maybe to those of you in the battlefield, you see these stories all the time, but that was actually quite new. So in January, Skyfire had dispatched a drone and it turned out not to be an event. There are a lot of false alarms, burglar alarms, and so on. And on its way home from the mission, police dispatch retasked us to check on the police officer that had pulled over a vehicle, but dispatch had not heard from the officer for several minutes. And the watch officer estimated that to send a police car there would have taken them maybe 5 to 7 minutes to find them, because the car was stopped at a complex clover leaf kind of highway on-ramp, off-ramp. Weren't sure what level they were in. So fortunately, we sent a drone there, and we saw that it turned out the officer had pulled over a car that was driven by someone that had recently escaped from a detention facility. And they were actually not visible from the road. The policeman and the driver were actually fighting with each other, and they rode down to the drainage ditch, not visible from the road. Fortunately, with an aerial view of a drone, we could see them. And it appeared that the police officer, even though he had his radio, he wasn't able to get it, and he was actually losing the fight. And there's concern that the assailant was about to get access to the policeman's service weapon and maybe use it against him. Because we spotted that, we were able to send backup, which arrived in 45 seconds, because we knew exactly where they were. They weren't driving around the cloverleaf to find them. We were able to find them. A backup arrived in about 40. We were on to 5 police cars in the end, but first one got there in 45 seconds, which helped to take control of the situation and apprehend the suspect. And watch officer credits us with most likely having saved this policeman's life. So I feel like there are stories like these that I'm hearing more and more of. This is in Huntsville, Alabama, also called Rocket City. That's what they call themselves. But I find it quite gratifying that we can have drone first responder, kind of drone as first responder operations here in the United States. Part of me worries that even our current level of capability, which is growing, is still far behind, right, China and other nations. But these technologies are working. And actually, as I was driving up here, I was actually reflecting, why am I thinking about the story from Huntsville, Alabama, and why am I not telling a story about California, right? We're not operating in California, we're operating in Alabama. And I feel like some of the regulatory concerns, and we know downtown San Francisco, crime here has been a big issue. And I think sorting out the regulatory issues so that we could, support police forces to ensure public safety. I think there's a lot of work to be done in the United States, especially right here in San Francisco.
I mean, when you're talking about the kind of regulatory environment, I mean, it's hard to not talk about what's going on in the federal level with Trump and Elon Musk's Doge movement, where they're really stripping down a lot of regulations right now. There's a large effort. It sounds like, what do you make of that movement?
We'll see, yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens. Maybe, the sector that I know the most about is AI, and so speaking just about AI, by the way, it's interesting, when I speak about specific policies, people think I'm therefore backing this side or that side. That's not my intent. I'm speaking specifically per issue, not per politician. But I'm actually very glad that Trump, rescinded the Biden White House executive order on AI. I think the Biden executive White House order on AI was an unnecessary act that created noise, and frankly, without making anyone safer, right? That's the important thing, while putting up hurdles to companies. Maybe just to share with you one interesting thing. So part of the consequence of that act was set up this AI Safety Institute under NIST, and that was headed by Elizabeth Kelly, that I think just left a few days ago. Now, to Elizabeth Kelly's credit, I think she actually did a good job, meaning that she did some lightweight monitoring, struck deals with leading foundation companies, asked some good questions, but she did not actually slow down AI development in any material way. So I feel like she was widely criticized for running this thing, but I think she actually did a good job, given the context, in that she took a thoughtful approach and did not, and asked good questions, and that was it. So I think the Biden White House executive order slowed down AI less than many of us feared, but I'm also glad that, it's now been rescinded.
So, I mean, I want to pivot a little bit to talking about kind of some of the technology here and the businesses around the technology. I mean, you talk a lot about AI agents. I think that's a word we've all heard a lot and still don't know exactly what it means. So can you, first off, just define what AI agents are, or at least what the vision of them is, and when you think we'll actually get them?
So about a year ago, the concept of AI agents or agentic workflows, it used to have a technical meaning. And then the marketers at big companies got a hold of it, and then it wound up.
Any company in particular? Or?
More than one, yeah. But maybe let me share with you how I and maybe the technical community views AI agents or AI agentic workflows, which is many of us would prompt a large language model to generate an output. And that's a bit as if you're going to imagine going to a human, or in this case, going to an AI, and saying, please write an essay for me on a certain topic, but I need you to write the essay by typing the whole essay out, writing from the first word to the last word, all in one go without ever using backspace. And it turns out we as humans don't do our best writing like that, and neither does AI. In contrast, if you can prompt an AI system to say, please write an outline, and then do some web research and download some web pages, stick in your large language model's input context, and then write the first draft, and then read your first draft and critique it and tell me where you think could be better, then revise it, and so on. With this iterative workflow where you're prompting the large language model multiple times, it will run slower, but you actually end up with a much better work product output. So that's the core of what the AI agentic workflow is, where AI agent can think for a long time, reflect on its own output, maybe call other functions. We call that tool use. Maybe if multiple agents collaborate on something. But these are the types of things that grew the set of tools we have to build applications. And maybe what we see at AI Fund for tons of applications, these agentic workflows deliver materially better results than we could without an agentic workflow on everything from, filling out cross-border trade paperwork to analyzing complex privacy policies to AI-enabled medical diagnoses. But for tons of these applications, we just could not get these tasks done with a direct LM prompting, but setting up the right agentic workflow was really critical to getting the good level of performance needed to deliver these applications.
I mean, I think part of the promise of AI agents, at least, is that, if they can use tools, they can actually do stuff, and they can be useful besides just being an information tool. and then at some point they can offload tasks from us. Like, I don't have to file that expense report, an agent can do it or something. I mean, but right now we're in a phase where we're watching the AIs do things, and if we have to closely kind of monitor them because they make mistakes. I mean, how do we get to the point where an AI agent can actually offload tasks from us?
I feel like we're slowly starting to get there. I think because AI models hallucinate, actually many people are developing kind of guardrails to try to constrain what the AI system does. And a very common design pattern is a confirmation flow, where if I build a chatbot to help you, order food delivery or something, very common design pattern is before I actually spend your money and dispatch something, right, to send a physical good to you, we pop up the dialogue to say, do you really want to spend, right, $15.95 for this thing? And then you have to click yes to that type of confirmation flow before an actually material transaction happens. So I think that we're getting there. One action that we already let large language models take on our behalf is web search, because it turns out that if you let AI system, including ChatGPT with search, right, fetch a few web pages, read it for you. Well, web search has very low downside. If you download the wrong web page, it's probably okay. So we're already increasingly letting AI agents take actions, and then with guardrails, confirmation flows, I think we're increasingly see it make its way into lower stakes types of actions, and it'll be gradually, I think, carefully entrusted with more and more tasks over time.
So while we're on the topic of AI agents, I asked one of your colleagues, is someone you work with at Stanford. His name is Kian Katan-Farouche. He's also the CEO of Workera, which is a company I believe you're on the board of and you're invested in. So, I asked him for a question to ask you up here, and he has said, when it comes to AI agents, should businesses be focused on building them themselves or partnering with companies that build AI agents so that they can use another company's?
Yeah, I think to me it's often about the application layer, and so I described the AI stack as semiconductor cloud foundation model application. I want to tweak that to add one more layer, which is between the foundation model and the application. There's a growing attention on agentic orchestration stack, agentic orchestration tools. So what this means is there are more and more companies that are building tools that make it easy for you to build applications that make lots of large language model calls or call lots of different things, and it helps orchestrate or coordinate a lot of foundation model calls to help you generate a more complex workflow. So I think a lot of these agentic orchestration layers, including LangGraph, AutoGen, MemGPT, also TrueAI, which I made a small personal investment in. I think that these tools are making it easy enough that a lot of businesses will be able to have technical teams build their own agentic workflows. Having said that, I think there's also a big role for the professional services firms and the systems integrators to play to help large businesses maybe do some of this implementation. So I think it'll be both, but it is getting easier and easier.
I mean, AI agents are a big buzzword right now, but what other kind of developments in the AI space do you think are really exciting kind of opportunities to build around right now? I mean, one of them I wanted to ask you about was reasoning models. We've seen a lot of those pop up, like with the Deepseek hype that we just heard about. That was a reasoning model. Do you think that that is a new source of development that businesses could tap into? I mean, that's fairly new technology. Or do you think that the underlying, GPT-4 style LLMs are really where the value is to build on?
No, so reasoning models definitely expands the set of tasks you can now do with AI. And it's been pretty interesting, actually. So consumer adoption of reasoning models is not taking off rapidly the way that ChatGPT adoption took off rapidly. I think it's because most people have not yet figured out how to prompt the reasoning models. The way you write prompts to reasoning models, it is different than the way you prompt, GPT-4o and Claude 3.5 Sonnet and so on. Usually you write much longer prompts, more straightforward style, just tell it what you want and it'll think for a long time and figure it out. And I think I think a lot of business leaders will benefit from using these reasoning style models but there is that hurdle to cross on learning how to prompt them well. Oh, Deep Learning.ai actually worked with OpenAI to create a course, a short course, takes about an hour to finish, on how to prompt the O1 reasoning model. I think I actually use O1 to help with my coding all the time, right? But you really need to prompt it differently than the other model.
So, I mean, you focus on the application and product layer a lot. I think that there is a problem right now in the AI industry where a lot of the products are not great to use. Like, I think that some of them have figured out great user interfaces, but I think most of them have been focusing more on getting AI into it. So I just wanted to kind of ask you, not one that you're invested in, but just what is the last AI product that you use that was kind of like a wow moment, where you're like, this is a really convincing application of it?
I don't know. I don't know the very differentiated answers, but I feel like, you know, I actually do use the reasoning models quite a lot, right? O1, O3 Mini, O1 Pro. Oh, I feel like OpenAI, which just released the deep research. I think OpenAI did a nice job on that. That was well done. I have fun with Suno with my kids. When my daughter does her math homework, you know, write a custom song to celebrate her doing math homework, kind of dumb stuff like that. Yeah, I think. I think this won't surprise you. I think Cursor is very well done. I think there's actually a next gen even beyond Cursor, but for now, I think Cursor as a coding assistant too is really well done.
What's the next gen?
Thinking about it, I'll let you know when I figure it out. But I feel like, yeah, some ideas we're exploring.
Got it. Got it. And I mean, what do you tell founders? I think something a lot of people struggle with building at the application layer is, how do I differentiate myself from an AI model provider like OpenAI, who has access to the underlying LLMs? So, I mean, what do you tell people building AI products for how to differentiate yours from a competitor's, from a cloud provider?
So, you know, this supposed kill zone of the LLM providers is something that's been talked about, right? You build a product, AI model gets better, it, you know, kind of wipes out your startup. There has been a little bit of that, but much less than is widely feared. So I think some of the most common examples are Jasper was, you know, when ChatGPT came out, that impacted Jasper. And then I guess there are also a lot of the chat with PDF apps, you know, that now all the providers integrate PDFs. But I think there is a little bit of a kill zone, but it's much smaller than most people think. In fact, other than the two examples I gave, how many more can you think of, right? And I think Jasper was one example that was talked about so much as a marketing assistant, writing copy editing, marketing copy, which I think, you know, when ChatGPT got better, really many people said it makes sense to just use ChatGPT directly. So I don't want to say there's no kill zone at all, but I think it's actually much more the exception. Now, if you look at one thing that OpenAI has done well, one advantage that OpenAI has is for the common workflows, OpenAI can train the model using fine-tuning or reinforcement learning, other techniques, to do an agentic workflow really efficiently. So it turns out that even before O1 was released, a lot of teams were writing agentic workflows for reasoning with chain of thought prompting. So a lot of teams were actually doing reasoning by prompting a large language model. But it turns out that reasoning is such a valuable general purpose thing, OpenAI then kind of baked it into one model, which could work much more efficiently than it were prompting a model. I think with the OpenAI's kind of deep researcher, many people already had various research agents built by prompting a large language model. And it just worked well, it was just a little bit slower. But the advantage that OpenAI had was it could bake that into its model, and OpenAI is actually very good at the many tactics needed, synthetic data and so on, to train a very efficient model to do one task. But I think, you know, even OpenAI has only so many people to do this for so many tasks. I think, and maybe one other example, right now there is lots of coding assistance types of startups. So coding assistance is another natural one to say, why don't we bake this into the large language model? And so there's a small number of things where I think a foundation model company, such as OpenAI, maybe others, would be really advantaged in building a really efficient workflow. And so I think there will be a little bit of that, right? As a foundation model companies bake in the reasoning workflow or the researcher workflow, which creates a threat to some startup that build a agentic workflow that's going to be a little bit slower. But I think the market's going to evolve. Will the startups start to fine-tune the foundation models, get these efficiencies themselves? Maybe. I think few companies are as good as the foundation model companies right now at that type of fine-tuning and reinforcement learning to tune the models. But the market evolves quickly. And then, frankly, for most applications that many of us are building, I think I just see it ending up in the kill zone of the foundation model companies as very low. Maybe especially when we build these applications that are very specialized. And I think of all the things that the teams of the foundation model companies could be doing, I don't know, are they going to be running around figuring out how to onboard and offboard models for a drone that's taking off, in Alabama? Is that what they're going to focus their time on, right? So the risk of most startups is probably lower than the fear that, frankly, Jasper, as one example, created.
How much do you think about AGI, this concept of a super intelligent AI system, and how focused? What do you think about the kind of focus that many AI labs have put on trying to create AGI?
So AGI is another one of those terms that used to have a precise technical meaning, but then the PR or something kind of really has so many alternative proposals or other meanings. I think people don't really know what it means anymore. The old school meaning is AI that could do any intellectual task that human can, and that's a pretty high bar. So if you have AGI, we better have self-driving cars that can drive as well as a human can, or just like most of us can learn to fly an airplane in like 40 hours or something. Show me an AI that can learn to fly an airplane, from scratch in 40 hours. So I think by the original definition of AGI, we're still very far away. But having said that, even though we're still far from AGI, it is incredibly powerful and useful. So I feel like AGI is not very useful as a day-to-day concept for what we need to do to build valuable things. It's been remarkable how much the hype, around AI. I think a handful of companies, was remarkably successful at driving certain hype-based narratives. Like, AI is so dangerous it could kill us all, or it's all about scaling laws. In fact, AI needs so much energy. We need nuclear reactors, But I feel like these hype cycles, which were sometimes driven by the fundraising or the marketing needs of various companies, was remarkably successful at delivering the fundraising and the PR that some of these companies wanted. But it's been maybe had an unfortunate distorting effect on the public perception of AI.
What do you think is going to happen in the next 5 years with AI? What are you telling founders to get ready for? What are you telling them to build towards? And how are you helping them kind of skate towards where the puck is going?
I think technology is continuing to evolve. So having your fingers and having a good instinct for where the technology is going, I think that is valuable. And then I think beyond that, it's been interesting how the foundation models feel like they're increasingly commoditized. And that's actually good for all the application builders. Maybe by way of analogy, in the mobile phone ecosystem, there are two gatekeepers, Apple and Android, iOS and Android. And this has limited the innovations we are allowed to build on mobile, because if neither of them lets us do something, we're just not allowed to do that on the mobile phone. But so the lack of gatekeepers, which open source, open weights models has really helped at the foundation model layer, means that people that want to build applications are much more free to pursue a wide range of applications without needing permission from a foundation model company. So that's been great. I think the next few years, the technology will continue to evolve. The exciting tech trends. So for example, maybe a couple tech trends I'm excited about. One of my teams landing AI, I think AI has changed the way we process text. I think the way we process images, I don't mean generation, but I mean analysis of images and video, that is reaching an inflection point. So the set of applications of image processing will explode in the near future. I think the voice stack has also become much easier than most people realize, where it's much easier than most people realize to build something where you can talk to the AI with your voice rather than just type to it. So I think staying on top of the tech trends like that are important because it shifts what's possible with applications. But the next few years will be a wonderful time with lots of people building tons of exciting applications. Oh, and I think this Kozo narrative, I think part of this was driven by the foundation model companies going out and saying, basically, look how good I am. I am so powerful. With a swipe of my hand, I could wipe out 1,000 startups. And frankly, I don't think that PR narrative was helpful. And I think there are tons of valuable things to build.
All right, I think we have a couple minutes here for some cute audience questions. I'm not sure if those mics are on over there, but I think we have time for a couple at least. So here, why don't we start over there?
Yeah, hi, can you guys hear me? Okay. Andrew, thank you for being here, sharing your perspectives, and Maxwell, thank you for driving a really great conversation. So Chris Sandor, co-founder, CEO of Readily. We provide AI solutions for both commercial and government. We actually had our AI deployed in Los Angeles during the wildfires, helping citizens get access to critical information. My question is around AI bias testing. So state legislations and even at some local levels are increasingly pushing bills through legislatures around mandating AI bias testing. And I wanted to get your perspective on how startups, especially at that application layer, can think about approaching that, because there's starting to be a cottage industry popping up where they may mandate that we have to use certain vendors for AI bias testing, and they're going to start charging anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 to do this testing, which for smaller companies is quite expensive, and when you're trying to manage your burn rate. So how would you advise startups to approach AI bias testing, knowing that right now our answer has been, well, OpenAI, for example, is doing extensive testing, red teaming, et cetera, but I don't think that answer is going to fly forever. But we also don't want to get sucked into some really expensive mandated industry.
I think this has been one of the, so clearly I think there's certain types of bias, discrimination that we do not want, right? I think discrimination between any group, I think there are certain things I think none of us want in the systems. And I think the problem with a lot of regulatory proposals is that it's too heavy-handed and too ambiguous. So right now, I think there's a proposed regulation in Texas that I think will penalize AI companies if your system turns out to be biased and so on. But when these terms are used in an ambiguous way, then no one knows what on earth we're supposed to comply. And then we end up, paying lawyers or the lobbyists that lobby the government the hardest to give some sort of certification that probably doesn't actually help things in any meaningful way. So I think we should fight these bad regulations as much as possible. I think concrete, tangible regulations, for example, let's get rid of non-consensual deepfake porn. I think that's great. I think we have clear standards and clear expectations. That's great. But I'm seeing a lot of these weird, ambiguous laws pop up that I think would not actually make AI safer or benefit society, but would just slow us down. So I think a lot of my friends and I, spend time trying to fight these regulations, sometimes successfully, but yeah, I hope we don't have many more of these things come to pass.
Thank you.
All right, do over here.
Hi there, my name is Jonathan Joannides. I help companies mitigate risks integrating software, both buyer and the seller side. And first of all, it's quite a privilege and treat to have you here, so thank you for your time. But my question is, you've got, you hear phrases like software, bill of materials, AI model cards. I think the question posed really is, how can you separate the wheat from the chaff? Like when you look at these different vendors, whether you're building a software tool or you are trying to incorporate it in, can you give your thoughts on how to look at transparency, how to look at credibility? your take just on how to promote this ecosystem so that it's working functionally, safely, and responsibly. Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. I think it is tough because AI is a highly technical subject. I find that sometimes it takes a little bit more of that technical judgment to figure out what's real and what's not. I think many companies have kind of bake-off-based procurement processes. Maybe those work well enough. And then I think I often don't worry about is it AI or not, but worry about the capabilities actually delivers. And maybe I'll just share one other tip that I tend to advise large enterprises for the buying process, which it turns out that every time you buy a product, many companies will try to create another data silo within your organization, right? Like buy some piece of enterprise software or whatever, then all your data gets sucked into this enterprise software and you almost lose access to it. It's very hard to access it. So frankly, when I make buying decisions, one of the things I try to get is enough control over my own data so that I have the freedom to continue to build other things on top of my own data with API access or whatever to the data. Because what I'm seeing is for this next period of time, AI is making it easier than before to process lots of different types of data. And what that means is that the data infra, where you can take whatever data you have, be it customer data or ERP data or usage data or defect inspection data or logistics data, the ability to have an enterprise where you can control your own data to get the data to wherever you want it to go so that AI can process it to make sense of it, that's going to be even more valuable than before, which is why when I buy software from vendors, and vendors don't always do what you want, right? Depending on market power and your options and whatnot. But I find that I will often pay extra attention to keeping control of my own data, even when I use their software to process my data and to avoid letting a vendor create another silo within my organization.
All right. Thank you. We'll do over here now.
Hi, Andrew. Honored to speak to you. Thank you very much. Learned a lot from you, and one of the pieces I think kind of had an epiphany today is that you introduced this new layer of the AI tech stack, which is that AI agent orchestration. I remember you did a video with Crew AI, and that's where I got into it. It was a year ago, right? And now we're seeing this come to fruition. Is there can I get your temperament on foundation layers, right, like OpenAI, tapping into the application layer like they just deployed an agent, a sales agent, and then like Google Cloud at the cloud layer, but now they're going, with DeepMind going off, and they're going to have a foundation layer, right? So we have these verticals within that tech stack that they're not saying we're going to wipe out everybody now. We don't have this kill zone, but they are now intrinsically entering these other layers of the tech stack. With like OpenAI Swarm, right? They're going into the orchestration layer and saying, okay, now keep coming to us. I guess, is that the trend that we're seeing now, is that they're going to slowly start strategically entering into these other stacks instead of where they live? Thanks.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the foundation model companies, because training models and selling APIs is such a tough business, I think that there will be strong temptations for a lot of the foundation model companies to move up into the application layer. And this is why I think some of the foundation model companies, if they end up picking off a few really valuable applications, that could help them grow significant as businesses. In fact, OpenAI's ChatGPT is an application, is a beautiful business, very strong consumer brand. When someone tries Gen AI, because of the strength of the ChatGPT brand, often ChatGPT is the first thing they try, unless Google's channel advantage means they try Gemini first or something. But I think just like ChatGPT is a fantastic application and a fantastic business, I think that there's a strong possibility we'll see foundation model companies move up to try to explore with building different valuable applications.
All right, over here.
My name's Andrew, and I think there's a lot to learn from your approach to bringing the ecosystem along into AI. So for myself, after I took your AI for Everyone course, eventually got into roles at Meta, U.S. Cyber Command, now in conversations with the military, Congress folks, and folks at the Vatican. What's interesting, though, is seeing who is shaping the social direction of AI. And while I certainly admire the technical talents of Elon, Sam, I don't know if they're necessarily the wholly integrated person with their full hearts, mind, and strength to be architecting the vision of what the future looks like. So I'm wondering instead, are there other players that you wish could be brought into the dialogue further for what that can look like with, say, philosophical, theological, ethical traditions that shape who we are internally more so than just the outcomes? As one example, how could we potentially collaborate with an organization as powerful as the Vatican or the Church?
It's interesting. I think a lot of us would be very happy to collaborate with a wide range of organizations, including Vatican and the Church and other religious organizations. I find that because AI is such a deeply technical subject, a lot of the momentum has been behind the technologists that deeply understand it, and the people that are further away from the technology certainly have an influence, but maybe it may be harder for, because AI is so deeply technical, I find that a solid technical judgment is important in order to accurately forecast where this will go. And so, at least for now, technologists seem to have the advantage in crafting narratives and realistic forecasts for where the world will go. But I think we do live in a multi-stakeholder world. Probably doesn't make sense if technologists rule the world. So eventually, hopefully, everyone will catch up. We can shape this collectively.
Thank you.
All right, over here.
Hi, thanks for being here today. Brandon Nozaki Miller from Veterans Lifeline Inc. and precrisis.ai. My question today is about education for American superiority and maintaining that and doing it through education of our youth for critical thinking in areas like AI and how to appropriately communicate with it, but not only with our youth, also the demographics that are currently still unaware of AI's existence and its utilization, and that they are actually talking to AI. And recently, I've spoken to some people like that who have treated AI as a mentor, as opposed to a tool to be checked up on. And how do we bring the education to areas that currently don't have it so that we can catch up and maintain a more forward place for progression in the future?
Yeah, thanks for that question. Maybe I'll say two things. One would be, I really wish we'd knock it off with the hyped up AI human extinction narratives. So as you know, Coursera, Cure Learning. Cure Learning is, we mainly sell into K-12 schools. We do a lot of work, Cure Learning, especially in K-12, and we're actually seeing students hear about AI, and then some students were actually saying things like, yeah, I heard about AI, but I also heard it could lead to human extinction, and I don't support human extinction, so I don't want to participate in AI. And that's just a tragedy that, these kids are turning away from AI when it could be so good for their career. So I wish we'd knock it off with these science fiction narratives that are discouraging our youth. And then second, I think right now there are 4 states that require some CS education in order to earn a high school diploma. Interestingly, California is not one of them, but I hope that we could. It really should be 50 out of 50 states. So some bright spots. Cure Learning, AI fund portfolio company. I'm also on the board. Angela Pazzinetti and then Jagriti, fantastic founders. Every student, we have over 100,000 students in the state of Tennessee that will have access to our AI and coding content. So I think if we could put in place the right training for the next generation, it will empower them much more. And it turns out that in the future, one of the most important skills for anyone to have is to be able to tell a computer exactly what you want it to do and to make the computer do it for you, right? And I think just like today, I can't imagine hiring a marketer or recruiter or whatever that doesn't know how to use web search. Kind of everyone's got to know how to use web search to function in an effective way. I think in the near future, your ability to make an AI do stuff for you will be a critical skill for tons of different job roles. And part of that actually means I encourage everyone to learn to code because even though prompting can take you a long ways. I'm seeing a huge difference still between people that only know how to prompt versus people that have that deeper technical understanding that can then, through prompting or other means, drive a computer to do exactly what you want it to do. So I'm seeing a lot of people, be it marketers or journalists or financial people, that learn a little bit of code and can use AI in a much more effective way. And I think prompting is becoming table stakes, in many job roles, but to go deeper, to make a computer do more complex things for you, that's becoming an increasingly important skill.
All right, over here.
Hi, Doctor. So my name is Jacob Kristen, and I just want to let you know that I watched your videos 2015, 2016, inspired me to go to a PhD. So I personally thank you so much for what you've done. So you spoke a little bit about the importance of open source. You spoke a little bit about policy, recent and more modern. I'm just curious, so I'm a chief AI officer of Prometheus Intelligence, and we're focused on defense tech. So I'm just curious if you would have any suggestions for the Department of Defense on how to sort of reconcile the importance of, relying on our legacy systems that are out there, the rapid innovation that can come from open source, while also trying to balance and not compromise national security.
Boy, it's interesting. I wish I had an easy answer. I think last year I was speaking with a general with many stars. Maybe I shouldn't. And the thing that struck me was we're talking about the military procurement process, and even this general with many stars, maybe I won't say how many, was saying it sounded like even he felt stuck, right? So I don't know. I think I have no idea if maybe Doge isn't the solution, but maybe someone will find some solution to helping us move faster as a nation. Sorry, I wish I knew, but I'm glad you're working on it.
All right, let's be our last question here.
I'm the closer. Thank you, Doctor. Thanks for all your contributions to technology in general. My name is John Krasnow. I am co-founder and CEO of Pyramid.ai, with the Y instead of the I in the word pyramid. We help with software discovery and evaluation at scale, so helping sort of bridge the information gap that exists in the marketplace to make it better matches between buyers and vendors. What are your thoughts on enterprises that are adopting AI, especially on general models, with the scheming that can happen? How can businesses that are AI first create confidence in the AI models and create that transparency required that people actually trust the results of deep research, et cetera?
Yeah, so it turns out that, so trust, guardrails, all of these are real issues. In my experience, trust has sometimes, but much less often than is widely feared, been a blocker to the deployment of AI system. So I find that often when we build AI, maybe a quick story. I was once deploying an AI system at Stanford Hospital for looking at patient electronic health records to figure out when to recommend a patient for palliative care, for end-of-life care. And so initially, when we rolled out the system, we started calling up doctors to say, hey, we looked at this patient's record. We think that they may have high risk of mortality considered for palliative care. So predictably, the doctor said, who are you? And who are you to tell me my patient's about to die? And then we actually tried to figure out how to build trust. And frankly, we missed it. So we built a system that would explain to the doctor, look at this patient. There was this lab result, there's a symptom, this is why we think this patient is at high risk of mortality. And I thought that if we could generate these explanations, the doctors would go, okay, this makes sense, this makes sense. But we actually missed it. The doctor took one look at our explanations, and then he said, oh, got it, this makes sense. Then they never looked at our explanations again. Because what the doctors needed was not a patient-by-patient explanation for whether or not the patient was at high risk of mortality. What they needed was, should they trust us as a team at all, or were we jokers that they should ignore? And fortunately, the thing that we built was this wrong thing, convinced doctors they were credible, and so they actually started taking our recommendations seriously, but they never ever bothered to look at our explanations at a patient-by-patient level again, because they could look at the patient's file and just render their own judgment really quickly, just fine. So I think trust is a funny concept. What it takes to build trust is different in different businesses, but even though AI has problems, it's sometimes wrong, sometimes biased, sometimes make things up or hallucinates, I think we have enough tools to reduce the magnitude of many of these problems enough that for many practical deployment settings, it's okay. Not all, not for some very high stakes medical applications, it's not good enough for that. But what I find for a lot of practical business implementations, be it guardrails or having AI agentic workflow to double check its work for factuality, we have enough tools to kind of make it work well enough for a lot of applications. And then after that, the trust building evaluation exercise, I found that it's more of a kind of a human process than a merely factual process. But as we work through that, I think we've been just seeing many more positive results than negative ones, I guess. But I haven't found one tactic to build trust other than this kind of run a lot of evals, address concerns, change management type of process.
Thank you very much.
Incredible. So I want to say a few things. First is, Andrew was speaking at an event a year and a half ago in New York City. There were congressmen, there were multimillionaires, probably billionaires in this event. And afterwards, as he was walking the streets of New York City, I caught up to him and said, hey, we do a military veteran startup conference, and we would love to have someone who is an expert on AI come talk to us. And Andrew was like, hey, I'm a very busy man, got the AI fund, deep learning, Congress wants to talk to me, TED Talks, but the only thing I will take time to do it for is military veterans. That's literally what he told me. And he said, And he said, if I can't do it, and he couldn't do it last year, he's like, I will be able and available to do it the next year. The other thing that I think is really cool is I met a founder a few months ago that got funded through AI Fund that's a Navy veteran. And so Andrew not just supports veterans, invests in veterans. Thank you, Andrew. We've all learned so much. I am very confident that there's going to be a military veteran AI founder that's going to be taking names and crushing it. And thank you, Maxwell. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.